So today, though, in one of the strangest years in world history, I am honored to have Dan Grieb with us. And I've known Dan for a really long time. I've known Dan for about 10 years. And what's interesting is, and I've known Dan, by the way, Dan, because you're a real estate agent, just like I am in Florida. And we're both, been in various networking groups together, and you're really top of your field. You're one of the top real estate teams in the nation. And you cover what is it, the market that you cover in Florida?
Orlando.
Orlando. Yeah. Okay. Orlando. So Dan, I've known you for about 10 years, and here's what's cool. Here's what's cool about Dan. And this alone would make this interview amazing. I have watched Dan, and I don't want to just say his physical transformation, because I think this is a mental transformation. I have watched Dan's physical and mental transformation, over the last really 5 or 7 years. You'll have to give me the exact time frame, Dan. He has lost and shed a ton of weight. He has himself become an Ironman. I mean, Dan, you and I we struggle with weight. I mean, some people do, some don't. I'm in that camp with you, right? And you have now transformed to you've done 15 iron distance races. Let me see if I got this right. 6 full Ironmen, including the one 3 weeks ago, right? 6, and 10 half Ironmen. So that alone, Dan, like that alone makes this a great interview. Like we could dive into that, right? But the reason we're here today is about 3 weeks ago, Dan was the coach and guide of the first ever athlete with Down syndrome to ever complete an Ironman, full Ironman. Went into the Guinness Book of World Records. Dan and Chris Nikic, who is the amazing athlete, and I want you to remember that name, Chris Nikic, because I think it should be a household name. They have been doing the national media circuit for 3 weeks. They've been on the Today Show. They've been on CNN. They've been on ABC, Access Hollywood. They're about to do the night show circuit, Dan tells me, including Jimmy Kimmel. And because I've known Dan for so long, I just called him and I said, could I interview you? And we are super, super honored that he fit us in the middle of all of this national press. So thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure. It's an honor to be here. I'm sorry that I was late today. I don't think that I'm some media star just because I, completed an Ironman race. I want to be known for a person that has character. So to you and the folks that are tuning in, I apologize for being late today. Unfortunately, Chris was a little bit sick, so I had to fill in on some things for him and had some meetings that ran a little bit late for me. But we're here. We're going to make the best for you possible.
That's all that matters. And Dan, I'm going to roll you back a little bit, because I do think that part of the arc of this story starts with your personal transformation. So can you kind of walk us through, briefly your fitness journey and how you became an Ironman?
Sure. About 5-6 years ago, I'm laying in bed with my wife. We've been married, 17 years, and I'm looking at Facebook, like, most people married 17 years do when they're laying in bed. And she's scrolling on Facebook, I'm scrolling on Facebook, and it has this thing called Time Hop. And it shows you a photo of 1 year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago. And I noticed that, like, there's been no change. I was always on a diet, working on this, working on that. And I was saying, I'll start tomorrow or I'll do this. And what I realized is I'd never made a commitment to my health. So I started asking myself, why have I never made that commitment? And I can track it down to my childhood. And that was simply this. I was raised by a single mom, relatively poor, troubled, upbringing. And now here I am, I'm 310 pounds, but I'm like, I've accomplished all my goals. I've got a wife that loves me. I love her. And I don't want to interfere with that. I've got a great relationship with my kids. I didn't have a great relationship with my dad, and I don't want to interfere with that. I've got a good business where people trust me and are willing to come work with me and be part of that. I don't want to interfere with that. And I've got a great relationship with my God, and I didn't want to interfere with that. So, I had heard my whole life, you can't have it all. Well, here's the question. Which one of those do you give up so that you can get your health back? Because you can't have it all. That was the thinking process I had. And I remember laying in bed that night and saying, like, if I die young, like, how does that benefit my marriage? Like, if I die young, how does that benefit my children? If I die young, how does that benefit, the people that trust me and allow and come to work with me? if I die young, how am I able to fulfill God's plan? And I said, you know what? I'm not going to buy that thinking anymore. I'm just going to give it a real try here. And I'm going to believe that my marriage will not suffer. I'll still be a great dad. My business will do well. I'll do well economically. And my relationship with God will stay strong. And I did. I leaned into that. But before I did that, I'm goal orientated. And I said, okay, what is a race or a thing I could go do that would be really hard, would require me to train really hard. I'd have to get in really great shape, and then I'd have to sustain it over a period of time. So an Ironman was the direction I went towards. And then I asked myself, how many Ironman does someone normally do? And they're like, well, they normally do one a year. And I'm like, great, I'll do 10 events in 2 years. And so I set a journey out to get in shape the first year, and then to do 10 Ironman after that. And that's how I got started.
I'm speechless that was your goal. That's pretty amazing. How does one get started from 0 to Ironman, right? Like, what does that even look like? What are the steps involved?
Right. Well, I mean, I wish I back then I didn't know what I know now, but I'm going to give you the answer I know now. And that is commit to getting 1% better. The way we train, I didn't go right from my couch to running, a marathon distance run. I ran a mile. I did a couple of push-ups, a couple of sit-ups. I committed to learning about diet and nutrition and understanding my own issues of why I stress eat. I started to start doing 5K races, and then 10K races, and then half marathons and full marathons and sprint triathlons, and then ocean marathons, which is where you swim for miles and miles in the ocean. And I just kept building and building and building. And then by the time I had, become an Ironman, it wasn't about what I had done. And you guys in Keller Williams world, this. Success is not about where you go or what you get. It's about who you become in the process. And for me, who I became was someone who wakes up early in the morning and just works out. I wake up in the morning and already know what my plan is going to look like, because you can't wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, or in my case, 3:50 in the morning, go work out at 5 o'clock in the morning and not already have your day planned out, because I have to plan my work clothes. I have to pack my lunch, my breakfast. I got to get the day started, because once I leave at, 4 o'clock in the morning, that's my day started. I'm not coming home until the evening.
That is so incredible. And it's interesting because we all have our own fitness journeys, and I'm starting mine. I ran my first mile straight this morning. I ran 1 mile straight, like not stopping. And I was thinking about Chris Nikic. I don't know why I struggle with that. Chris Nikic's dad. And he was talking about how the 1% rule is that sustained effort over time. And I was like, and then I went to finish my 90-minute workout. And I thought, well, I could have run farther. But I think what I want to do is do 1% better tomorrow, and then 1% better the next day, and rest my muscles and make sure I'm doing it sustainably. And then in 6 months, I think one day I'm going to look up and go, I've done 5 miles. Because what Chris's dad said that I thought was interesting is he said it's way harder to go from mile 1 to mile 2 than it is to go from mile 100 to mile 101. That's actually easy. I thought that was really interesting.
You're exactly right. And, before your audience starts thinking like what we're talking about, 1% is about getting better physically. It's not. It's about this is the strategy to heal your marriage too. This is the strategy to get back in relationship with people that you haven't spoken to in a long time. This is a way that you can turn your finances around, your business around. See, we immediately want to go from, 0 to marathon, or poor to rich, or unhappy in our marriage to everything's perfect in our marriage. And that's just not how it works. And the number one reason why it doesn't work that way is because there are exceptions where people make, they go from 0 to $1 million 1 year, or, nobody, no prospects in their life in terms of a relationship, and then they're married a month later. And it seems like it all worked out. It was so simple. But the reality is things that you build over time, it takes a long time for you to lose them, because it's not about just about achieving a goal. Like, hey, I became a millionaire real estate agent, or I have this great marriage, or I have this thing. It's about who you become in the daily processes of grinding it out, of refining yourself in that goal. And that's what we do with Chris. And that is the journey that I followed as well. Of course, my journey was a little bit more crazy because I, did a lot of races. But I think this is a formula for success in anything, not just success in physics.
Yeah, I love that. I always think of that Gary Keller quote when he says, we don't set goals to achieve them. We set goals to turn into the person we have to be to achieve them. That reminds me of that. That's great. So how did you meet Chris Nikic? And, how did this whole thing start with being his coach and his guide?
Yeah, great question. For me, after I completed those 10 Ironman, I figured, I had accomplished my goal, which is I got in shape and then I sustained it over 2 years. Where I could, do an Ironman. So now here I'm 3 years sub 300 pounds. I'm now lost 100 pounds. I'm now in the 200 pound range and low 200s.
Congrats. Huge.
And I'm saying like, all right, so now it's time for me to retire and go do something else. But I'm thinking like, I regained my health in my 40s. Like, how do I thank God for this opportunity? And one of the ways that I know that the only real way that you can serve God and thank God for what he does in your life is to go serve his people. Is go help his people accomplish it. So I said, I'm going to go find someone that I can help become an Ironman. See, an Ironman, again, is not about a race. It's about the process. It's about who you become in the process. And then once you become an Ironman, you can always look back and say, I can heal my marriage. I can figure out what's going on with my kid right now, or I can get through this temporary issue in my business because I'm an Ironman. Like I went through Ironman, I can accomplish anything. And so I wanted to help someone else do that. And at the time, my prayer and my dream was that I would help someone. It was that I thought it would be a blind person because the only people that needed to be guided were blind people. And I started asking people. There's an agent, Matt Hermes. I don't know if you know that name in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
His daughter's an Olympic swimmer. She's blind. Yeah. I'm like, perfect. I know the Hermes. I'll go ask McLean if she wanted to do it. McLean's like, no, thank you. I'm like asking all these blind people. I'm literally like walking up to blind people and saying, hey, you ever thought about becoming an Ironman? Like, hell no. So I struggled and I started to believe that it wasn't going to happen. And here's the interesting thing about God. Not only does he answer your prayers, but he answers in prayers in his way, not your way. And his ways are always better and bigger than ours. So who does he send me? He sends me Chris Nikic. Chris had done a sprint triathlon with a Special Olympics coach. And he started getting too fast for her. And they needed a coach that could take him further distances and was faster. So at the same time, Special Olympics was doing a pilot program where they match able-bodied athletes to Special Olympics athletes, and they started a club. Special Olympics never even had a triathlon team. First one here was in Orlando, Florida. First one ever. And
wow.
And they brought Chris to one of our meetings and said, anybody want to train Chris? We need somebody that's high energy, very driven, that would love our son. And I'm like, all right, well, that sounds like you're talking about me. And I just happened to be the captain of that team and one of the assistant coaches. And since it started a forever friendship.
That's incredible. I'm curious, as you guys got into the training, I took the opportunity to prep for this interview by talking to a friend of mine who has a beautiful little girl with Down syndrome. And I asked her, what she was curious about. And her and a couple of her mom friends in that community were curious about, what the hardest parts were to train for and to accomplish. And they were especially interested to know about the tethered swim. Wondering if you could kind of talk a little bit about both of those things.
Yeah. So the first question is what was the hardest part about training Chris and going through that? So there's a lot of hardest parts because the question can take on many forms. So I'll tell you one. The hardest part for me is I have a D personality and I want to control everything and I want to make everything happen. The first thing I had to realize is this race is not about me. This is Chris's race. I'm his guide. And so wherever this race goes, however this happens, it's for Chris. So if there's a lesson in failure that needs to be learned, that's Chris's lesson to be learned. It's not my lesson to be learned. So if he needs to fail, I have to let him, which is like the excruciatingly hard part of this for me, because I don't want to see him fail. The next lesson that's really hard is that people that have intellectual disabilities like Down syndrome are incredibly lovable. They're incredibly, incredibly lovable. As a result, society wants to do something to them that is so detrimental. And that is society wants to protect them. And they want to protect them by saying things like, that's not realistic, or do you really think that a person with Down syndrome should get in the water and do that? Or like what if he crashes his bike, or what if he doesn't succeed? What if you guys do 100 miles of 112 miles? Think of how let down Chris would be. Like, is that fair to him? Like, those are all limiting protective statements. Like, what if he does 100 miles? Then he becomes the first person with Down syndrome to do 100 freaking miles. What lessons will he learn? What will he become? See, we see him, and the reason why Down syndrome is difficult is because in the intellectual disability world, they say Down syndrome is written all over their face. You can see their disability. You know that they have a disability just by looking at them. And so most people want to protect them. Well, because of my unique upbringing, you know that I went through a lot as a child, through some abuses and troubles. I've been minimized my whole life, and I've been told I wouldn't amount to much. And Chris and other people like him with Down syndrome, from the moment their parents find out that they have a child with Down syndrome, they're told, number one, would you like to know what your options are? Now, I'm not going to go into what your options are, but you just do some guesses. What mother wants to be told that? Now, the next thing is, from that moment forward, they're told your child's not going to amount to much. Your child's not going to amount to much. Be prepared to babysit this person the rest of your life. It's very hard to live in a world where people minimize human beings and tell them they're not going to amount to much, especially when I was told I would not amount to much. And look at me, I'm being interviewed by you. There's 200 people that want to hear what I have to say. They would have told me when I was a kid that was impossible. That would never happen. So I think that was very hard dealing with that. However, that issue is forever resolved and will never be spoken of again because of what Chris has done. In terms of swimming with a tether, it's no big deal, actually. It's very easy. Chris swims like he's supposed to. He's attached at his hips to me. And what I do is I basically just direct him. And, who wants their child that has an intellectual capacity of a 9-year-old to be out a mile out into the ocean with 2,000 other swimmers without some level of protection? And that's what I serve in the water. I keep him going straight. I keep him on pace. I keep him safe when we're out there. So it's actually a lot easier than it looks. It's not that hard at all. Chris doesn't exactly enjoy the tether because a lot of times I'll pull him if he doesn't swim fast enough and he doesn't like being pulled. But him and I have come to some understandings.
I'll bet you have. Can I deepen the question? I want to really drill down on this because I want to ask, staying on this, what are the unique challenges that an athlete with Down syndrome has training for an extreme sport like this, physical and you mentioned some of the intellectual disabilities, which, by the way, I didn't respond because I was just listening to you. I thought that was really wise what you said. But what are the unique challenges that an athlete at this level with Down syndrome has?
Well, I mean, he has more challenges than I can speak to because I literally could spend the next hour telling you what they are, but I'll tell you a few. Number one, Down syndrome means he has an extra chromosome, which means that he has a hard time creating muscle. So in Chris's world, he couldn't hold his head up straight until he was like 5 years old. He couldn't eat solid food until he was 5 years old because he didn't have enough muscle tone in his mouth. His mother used to have to stretch his mouth out to help build muscle tone. He only ate baby food until like 5, 6, 7 years old. That's a challenge for him. Most people with Down syndrome, and this things like I didn't know, they have to have open heart surgery within the first 6 months of them being born because their heart walls aren't completely formed. I can only imagine how terrorizing and fearful that as a parent must feel when your little baby is having that like major heart surgery within 6 months of being born. Chris has had multiple surgeries on his ears. His ear canals are too small. So he had to have them like widened out. So he has balance issues. He has an intellectual disability, which means like if this is your brain, it has 5 lanes, right? And you can just send traffic down either lane at all times. Chris only has 2 lanes with the same amount of traffic. So that traffic is always like, when you're going down the road and there's a crash and like everything's slowed down because of it, his brain always works like that. Chris does not have a concept of time, space, or distance. So he does not know like what 1 mile is versus 100 miles. Chris does not understand human, he doesn't understand like interpersonal skills that well. He gets it, but he doesn't really get it. He lives in a different world than we do. And that's where it becomes his superpower. And the hardest part to training him and for Chris is that no one has ever done this before. I couldn't call someone and be like, hey, what do I do at mile 100 with a Down syndrome athlete? What do I do if a Down syndrome athlete starts exhibiting what we call bonking in a race, low blood sugar? Like, what do you do? How do they process oxygen like we do? How do you negotiate with pain with them? Like all of that. No one's ever done this before. So all of those are limitations that he had to overcome. That, and on top of, he's 21 years old. So for basically 18 or 19 years of his life, everyone, including his parents at some level, have told him, you're not going to amount to much. Now, his parents did that only because they listened to the experts and the doctors, like, hey, you're not going to amount to much. So Nick, his father, says that he has a daughter that was very smart, very intellectually smart, an older daughter, very athletic. She was walking within a few months of being old. She was playing soccer. She grasped concepts. She was very smart. And he always treated her as gifted. And then Chris, they always treated him as special. So he's had a lifetime of being treated special by everyone around him. And then on top of all these other disabilities, now he's got to go do a race.
So how did you coach to that, Dan? What did you do with that? How did you take that? How did you coach?
Well, I would say, like, I wish I came up with this on my own, but it's his dad. He's got an amazing father. His father taught me how to coach Chris. And it was very easy because a lot of the coaching that Chris needs, I resonate with, I need it too. And I think it uniquely works for me because of some of my own wounds in my life. Is number one is we constantly remind Chris of his dreams. Now, if Chris was on this right now and I was to say, Chris, what are your dreams? He would tell you, I want to live independently. I want to own my own house, own my own car, and marry a smoking hot blonde, just like my mom. Like, he'll tell you, that's my dreams. Those are my dreams. If you said, Chris, write down your dreams, he would write those down. He knows his dreams. Ironman is not one of his dreams. It was never one of his dreams. Ironman was a vehicle for him to get to his dreams. So when I would train Chris, and we're gonna talk about how Chris and I hug a lot. Whenever I'm hugging Chris and making him feel better and calming him down and getting him through something, I'll say, Chris, don't forget, you get your own car one day. You're gonna get your own house. God's already sent you a smoking hot blonde specially for you. It's already on the way. Now we just got to go be an Ironman so we can start the process of all of that. And I would coach him to that. And then from a foundational coaching point is that we would coach him to just get 1% better every day. We did this. Now let's do a little bit more. All right, we did this. Now let's do a little bit more. And limitations, like we all have limitations, but God can use those as superpowers as well. So like Chris has limitations that are also superpowers. Like Chris cannot tell you what 1 mile is. He doesn't know. He doesn't know what 10 miles is. But what Chris does know is Chris loves routine. He loves to do the same thing. So in his neighborhood is a gated community. It is 0.08 miles around. It is less than a mile. I want you to imagine riding 100 miles in that neighborhood. That to me is like death. I hate it. It's the worst thing ever. I mean, the same mailboxes, the same cars, the same things, 114 times for us to do 100 miles. Chris loves it. He likes to count loops. If you were to ask, if Chris was standing right here and I said, Chris, you ready to work out? He would say, how many loops are we going to do? That's all he cares about. He does everything in a loop. Well, that's his superpower. He likes routine. He can do the same thing over and over again every day. And
so is that what you did? Did you do the loops? Did you sacrifice your own personal health for that?
Oh, yeah. Everything's a loop. We found a lake that was 2 miles. We ran around that for 26 miles. We found his neighborhood. We ran around that. We found ways that he could just assimilate to a loop. And if it was predictable, we just kept doing that predictable thing over and over again. Because once I built the engine underneath him, between me, him, our coach Hector, and our training partners, we knew that we could get him across the line.
That's incredible. That, you know what I think's amazing about it too, Dan, is you took the back seat. This was Chris's party, and you're a support person in this. And I'm curious, what drove you to go through all of that training and all of those loops, which I'm with you, like give me a one-way run every time with a car on the other end.
Mhm.
What drove you to keep this up, knowing that you were in, this isn't your story, you were a background on this?
Well, first thing is I felt like I owed a debt. I keep saying God. I mean, I believe in God. I also use the F word sometimes, so don't judge me too harshly.
Oh, we are kindred spirit there.
Okay, good. But I felt like I owed it to God because, like, look at my life. Like, I'm not supposed to be married in 20 years. No one in my family's been married 20 years. I'm not supposed to be, a functioning member of society. Most people in my family are alcoholics or in jail or in trouble. I'm not supposed to have wealth. No one in my family has ever had the wealth that I have. I'm not supposed to be where I am. And how do I thank God for that? But just giving the best of myself away. And the best of myself is in here. It's not the things I own. And my presence is there. This is a Dan Grieb original. It says your money is cheap and your leadership is expensive. Like my leadership is expensive. My heart, my influence is expensive. Everything else is really cheap. People can give away a ton of money, but never actually care about what they gave their money away for. And that's cheap. But your heart being in something is expensive. And I felt like the best thing that I could give away was me.
I do want to move into, because you and I had an incredible talk about this, and we talked about the hugs in this, and I found myself repeating it a couple times in the last 24 hours. So I'd love to hear and have you share with everybody, Dan, some of the lessons that you've learned from this.
Yeah, give me one more second. I want to finish that last thought. And that
Yeah,
is,
of course.
after that, as I started to realize the impact that what Chris and I were doing on other people with Down syndrome, other families with intellectually disabled people, I realized that, like, what we're doing really matters, because we didn't just go straight to Ironman. We did a half Ironman, we did Olympic distances, and people would come up and they would, like, start crying and say, like, I can't believe you just did an Olympic distance race with me. I can't believe you just did a marathon, a 70.3. And I started realizing, like the world needs this. And God has uniquely prepared me to be the person that has the grit and the heart and the desire to do all of this. And I have a great business that will support me in doing it, and a great family, and my wife, like, everybody was behind me. I said, I just got to lean in and see this thing through. So you asked me, the next question was, what are all the things, the lessons I've learned?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many, and I know you've heard a few. Number one is Chris requires a hug to recalibrate. So he has the limitation of not understanding social rules and boundaries and all of that. But he does understand human connection, and he needs human connection. He feeds off of it. So he hugs you if he's happy. He hugs you if he's sad. If he's done something that you have to kind of correct him, you know what he'll say? Can I please have a hug? Or if he's feeling pain because of a race, he'll say, can you give me a hug? And that hug is me calming him down, letting him know he's safe. And I call the most special of all those hugs is the hug of vulnerability. It's when he's really vulnerable, and only myself and his dad are the only men that get that. He's a guy, so he likes hugging girls, obviously. So I get those hugs. And I've learned that lesson is that I wish I'd been hugging people a lot earlier in my life, because hugs offer healing. They offer connection. Hugs can solve a lot of problems. Like, what if the next time I got mad at my wife, rather than, like, letting her have it or telling her my position on how the world should work, I just said, can I give you a hug right now? Not just like this temporary quick hug thing, but this, like, hold you for a moment so that you can feel my heart. I learned that from Chris. Like, I've slowed down. I'm a calmer, nicer hugger person because of Chris. The second thing is that Chris doesn't have a concept of time, really. He doesn't know, a year ago versus a month ago versus, 10 years ago. He doesn't understand that. He doesn't know a distance very well. So Chris doesn't live in the future, and he doesn't live in the past. He lives right now. And sometimes right now just has to go by, and I have to hug him while right now goes by. And then once right now is gone, he's ready to go back out there. Well, what if we lived in a place where we just weren't so tied up on like the mistake I made yesterday, or how that guy hurt me, or how difficult yesterday was? What if I just thought about right now, about the fact that like you and I are just sitting here talking, and you're in Washington State and I'm in Orlando, Florida, and we're a couple friends reconnecting that haven't had a chance to see each other in a long time. Like, what if we just lived in that? Or what if we weren't so concerned with the future? Like, so what about next week? Like, so what about tomorrow? Like right now is just freaking amazing. And you know, that's me speaking his language. Like Chris says, I say, Chris, how you doing? He goes, freaking amazing. like just what if today just was just going to be freaking amazing? And I've learned I've got to live in the moment more and just soak it all in, because these moments over time, they just go away. And, you know, when you're 46 years old, you start realizing that you might have more yesterdays than you have tomorrows. And I don't want to miss the moments. I don't want to miss the connections that are yet to be made, and the best of me that is yet to be given away.
You know what's interesting about that, Dan? I spent some time in India, and specifically in Kashmir, which was, Kashmir is a place you couldn't really go to. Now, you really shouldn't have gone when I went. And we were spending time with a family that we knew there. And one of the kids was a boy with Down syndrome, and they revered him as a holy person. And in India, they view being mindful and present and in the moment. They revere it so much, at least with our friends and their family, that in their mind, he was almost a spiritual being. That's how they treated him. They treated him with so much love and kindness and almost reverence when we were there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I get that. I've had people send me messages about interactions they've had with Chris and I, and they'll say things like, I felt like I was in the presence of God. Yeah. I think there is a divinity at work. You know, in the Christian Bible, it says, you know, that God uses the least of these. He doesn't use the best of these. He uses the broken jars to hold the most, because he knows that they need to be held and that there's value in them. And you can see that at play in Chris's life and in other people with Down syndrome too. You know, for me, I'm almost kind of ashamed, but yet I do recognize it's part of an overall plan that a year ago, I didn't even know anybody with Down syndrome. Like, didn't know a single soul with Down syndrome. I didn't know anybody who had a kid with Down syndrome. I knew anybody who had a brother or sister with Down syndrome. I didn't know anybody. It isn't like Down syndrome just got invented just prior to COVID virus. It's been here forever. It's been here since I've been alive. And so what has happened is, I think, one of two things. Either A, I saw them and I didn't recognize, or I saw them and I was afraid to approach like any other person. So I just minimized, like, oh, that's somebody's special need child and I should not go bother them. And the last thing, and I'm hoping that some of your audience has special needs, is that have special needs family members hear this. Or maybe because like Dan Grieb is a loud, big guy, they were like, oh, no, like we're going to keep our kids safe. But here's the thing, you know, even with Chris, when I first met him, his parents every once in a while would say things, I would hear them, and I hear this a lot more with other folks. They would say things like, you know, I don't know, it's okay. You don't have to do that for my child. You don't have to do that, because they were feeling like they were bothering me. And the reality behind that is that Chris's unique desire to hug people, love people is exactly what I needed. And you don't need to protect me from Chris. You don't need to keep Chris away from my community. My community needs more Chris's. Now, Chris has his unique challenges sometimes too. However, that's part of any relationship. Any relationship is going to have its good parts and its bad parts. And I want to be fully known as a human being, and I want to fully know him as a human being, and I want to know him for his best parts, and I want to know him for his worst parts, just like I want to be known for my best parts and my worst parts, because that's how I can have intimacy.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's really incredible. What do you want others to take away from this, Dan?
Well, I think that number one is I want them to believe that anything is possible. That's the tagline of Ironman. Anything's possible. And just because someone else told you that you can't do something, that does not have to be your prophet. They're not your prophecy. Just because someone else doesn't believe in you doesn't mean you don't have to believe in you. The next thing behind that is like, for me growing up, I was a young man who, when I needed a mentor, they just didn't exist. The older men that I needed to teach me how to be a man, they weren't there. And so I made this commitment that I wanted to grow up and be somebody that other young men and women could look up to. And then if I said, hey, VJ, I'm proud of you, or so-and-so, I'm proud of you, that would have meaning to them. But before my opinion of you can matter, I have to elevate myself to a position where you could actually respect me. And you could actually see in my daily interactions that I have enough character that you'd want to be like me, so that my voice can matter. Well, listen, I'm a poor kid from Long Island, New York, who they told me I would not amount to much. And there are people that are interested in what I have to say. And it's because I made the choice to clean myself up from the inside out and to go give the best of myself away. And now I can speak into people's lives and do things that really matter to people, and they receive it. It is a lot of accountability, especially me coming on like a show that'll probably be watched by 1,000 people and saying, I want to have a lot of character, because now I have to live with a lot of character because they're all watching me. But guess what? I mean, that's a fair journey, and I'm willing to go on it. And I think
it's such an amazing testament to how sacrifice can bring us into our whole selves. You know, sacrifice is such an amazing concept, and you've just exemplified it.
Well, thank you. I would say that it's not an easy journey. The high road is oftentimes very difficult. There is a lot of people that misunderstand me and think I'm something that I'm not, just because they see the drive and the fire. But if they ever spend enough time to get to know me and know my heart, they would say, even at my worst days, that my desire was to do something right. I just did the right thing the wrong way. And that if they would come beside me and show me how to do the right things the right ways, they would probably find an amazing human being in front of them. And I have to recognize that that's probably true with a lot of people that I've decided are bad guys or bad gals, where if I went to them and said, like, what's going on? Help me understand. Like, did you want to hurt my feelings when you did that? Or was that your intention? That they might respond with, oh no, that was not my intention. I was attempting to do the right thing the wrong way. Or I'm so hurt by my own situation that I didn't have a chance to think about you. But now that you've brought that up, you know what? I should have thought about you.
Yeah. How many hours a day do you train for an Ironman, or a week? What does this look like? You know, give us an average week when maybe you're, I don't know, 2 months out in the peak of it, I'm guessing.
Well, Chris or a normal person, because Chris has to train longer than other people.
Wow. Why is that?
Well, because Chris goes slower. He has to do a 100-mile bike ride. I can do a 100-mile bike ride in 5 hours. It takes Chris 6.5 hours. So it's different, right? So I would say when I train with Chris, we train for 8 hours on Saturday, 8 hours on Sunday, and collectively between the two of us on the lowest end, 2 hours to 6 hours every day. So he does, that's roughly 16, about 30 hours a week.
Wow.
It requires a lot, and nutrition in there too, and stretching and
I was just going to say, because by the time you're meal prepping and figuring out all the macros and everything you have to eat, and I'm guessing supplements, and, you know, I just learned about runner's chews, that you can chew things while you're running. I'm guessing that it's more like 50 or 60 hours a week. I mean, if you add everything up, is that accurate?
It's a lot. And here's what I want to let you know. You can do it. Like, I believed at one point that like this, what I'm talking about, was impossible. I just wake up earlier. I wake up at 3:50 in the morning, 4 o'clock every morning, and I have all my stuff prepared the night before, and I'm off to the gym. Today alone, I've already ran 2 miles, and I've already biked like 25 miles today. I did it on a trainer, so, you know, it was an hour and a half. But I've already done that, and I still have another run to do tonight. So I'll do 5 miles with my son tonight. So but it's possible. And I still have date night on Thursday night with my wife, and I train Chris, and I'm doing all this media stuff, and I have a great business. Like, I don't want you to think in terms of subtraction. Like, to have this, I have to subtract that. Say, I want to have this, and I'm going to add that. And it's really possible. It's really what's happening up here. It's what you decide to do up here. You know, as you expand this, then the whole world expands as well.
Well, yeah, and it doesn't happen overnight, like you said earlier, right? You don't go from 0 to 30 hours a week in 1 week, I'm guessing. Is that correct? I mean, it kind of builds up to that.
Yeah, everything is a building. I mean, it didn't go from, you know, like seeing my wife for the first time to being married 10 years overnight either. You know,
Yeah.
we went through a dating process, we went through an understanding process, we went through all of that. And then there was courtship and marriage and 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And again, like I've had to develop into somebody new. Same was true with my real estate career. I didn't go from getting my license to having a team of 16 people. You know, it was a development process. I had to become a better leader. Like the leader that's standing in front of them today is not the leader they had 3 years ago. It's a totally different person. And how did I get there? Is I made a lot of mistakes and I learned from my mistakes. And I just chose to get better every day.
Yeah, I understand that completely. How do you become that productive? I'm guessing you have to get really productive running your business, right? So what have you done to kind of fit both in? Clearly, you've become a ninja in productivity. You'd have to be.
Well, yes, and I understand leverage, and I'm 16 years in, so I don't have to play the first year agent job role. I have money, so you know, if I don't have enough hours, I have a full. Like this is the first year I have a full-time assistant. Like her name is Jessica, and if you ask Jessica what she do for a living, she says whatever that guy's doing. So if I'm doing an Ironman, she's doing an Ironman. If I'm traveling, she's traveling. So she goes everywhere with me, and I pay for that. Now, when I was younger, before I had Jessica, I just had to figure out a way to do it. I think that productivity is necessary. I think that also your target has to change. And if I can go into Dan's soapbox about that, I'm really glad that you did not ask me the traditional real estate questions because it would have been awkward when I refused to answer them. Like you didn't ask me, Dan, how many units do you sell? I'd say, I would have asked you, like, when did that become relevant? How much volume? Like, was that relevance? Because in our industry, a lot of times we ask these questions, like how many members are on your team? Like 16, like, why is that relevant? I can show you how I have a lot of units, a lot of volume, a lot of people, and I'm dead broke right now. I can even sell a book on that right now. I can sell you guys books on that. Those are measurements of non-success. You know, people that have gained a business over time incrementally and built a really great business, they're not going to answer questions like, if you said to them like, share with me your profit. They would be able to tell you a number, not a percentage. Oh, I'm profitable 40%. 40% of what? 40% of gross, 40% of net, 40% of this. Like, no, they wouldn't know that. I want people to choose to be wealthy, which is a life free of anxiety, be rich or famous. Just understand you're not going to be both. And unfortunately, awards are given at real estate brokerages for transactions and volume, and you feel great about how many people are on your team and all that other stuff. But the reality of that doesn't pay your mortgage. That doesn't allow you to leave a financial legacy. If you look around my office, this is not about money. This is my brain. This is me watering my brain every day, and out of my brain comes opportunity. There is not a single sales award in my office except for this one. I'm part of a coaching company that if you're the best student, they give you a dragon. So I have a dragon. Like, that's it. You will not find a sales award in my office ever, because that is an indication of past performance. I'll take the 2025 number one salesperson in Florida award today, but in 2025, I'm going to throw it away. I should be pressing on towards that. I want to be focused on leaving a financial legacy for my family. And I also have to make sure I understand as a real estate agent. Now, this is the world according to Dan. So if Ben's coaching company or Maps or someone else tells you something different, go with what you want. I've divorced myself from the thought that I have a business, because I don't. This is not a saleable business. No one's going to buy my real estate company. That I've literally walked outside, talked to my best people and said, if I retired tomorrow, would you still work here? And they're like, no, I came here to work with you. I love working with you. If you left, I'd leave. Well, my number one admin person that like is irreplaceable. Hey, if I left tomorrow, like, I hired someone else and they paid you the same amount and they just took over for me, would you? No, I would leave. Like, I would go somewhere else, look at other options. So I don't have a business that's saleable. I recognize also that like a hardware store is a saleable business, but they also make a profit margin of like 10%. So if you sell this hammer that you bought for, $10 and you sell it for $11, then you just made a 10% profit. Like you win. Over time, you might be able to sell that hardware business, but you live on these low margins. But in real estate, we've got agents that are like doing like 40, 50, 60% profit margins. That means they're making $100,000 and their bottom line after paying their taxes is $50,000. That's a 50% margin. That's unbelievable. You can just stack opportunities of cash up. It's the last frontier of going to school for 2 weeks and then boom, making a crap load of money. Like, this is the reality of that. Now, you take that money, you invest in the stock market, you buy real estate, you use deferred compensation, you do other great strategies like that. But here's the problem. You're not going to get an award for having the most paid off houses. They don't offer that. You're not going to get an award for having the most money in your retirement account. Well, what if we decided just here in Ben Kinney's companies, just through VJ's coaching, that we're never going to apologize for being awesome. And we're going to say, here, our culture is that here we talk about everything that works out. If you're having a great relationship with your husband and your wife, you talk about it. If you're celebrating your 5th year and you feel like you've only been married for 6 months, you talk about it. If you've had an amazing month and you made $40,000 in profit, you talk about it. Like, we don't hide that from each other. We share the best about ourselves. And then we hold each other accountable to profitability and savings. We say things like, what's your goal to save at the end of the year? How much are you going to invest in the stock market at the end of the year? How much debt are you going to eradicate from your life? We're going to have an award, a little sticker you can wear on your Keller Williams polo that says debt free. And we know the people that have paid their houses off and paid off all their debts, because in the rest of the real estate world, they don't let you do that. You can talk about how much credit card debt you're in. You can talk about how terrible the real estate market is, and that's acceptable language. But if you start talking about how great your marriage is, or how much money you've made, or how much debt you've paid off, or how you're sitting financially, you know what they want to do? Like, kick you out of the office, tell you to calm down. That's too personal. Well, what if we just made a commitment that we stop doing that? And that's what I
Yeah, not in our world. We celebrate all that. So
we need to. I think there's people that need to get more involved in that. And if they're not already connected, they should probably get connected with that tribe, because that's what they want. Winners want to be around that.
Yeah. We talk about the difference of being rich and wealthy. Rich is a lot of money. Wealthy is having enough passive income to fund your life. And that's really all of our goals. And so many people are trying to get rich by, kind of having these assets that are not cash flowing, and then they're growing with appreciation, and they have no money. They're actually broke. So we believe in our world, this is about cash flow and about having enough cash flow to fund your life. And that's what we celebrate very openly. So we have created that culture. This is a fantastic conversation. I didn't know it would go here. Really great.
Well, I think we have kindred souls for more than one reason. I think that if we're not careful, we'll get lulled to sleep with mediocrity, and mediocrity is actually very safe. If you're just like everybody else, you never have to worry about getting ridiculed or beat up. But if you strike out and decide to do something different like me, it took a long time for my family to recognize what I was doing was building a life and a legacy for myself when I refused to do things we've always done. But yet, my hope is that my great grandchildren remember what I did for them. And I'm 46
Incredible.
years old, and completing an Ironman and helping a person with Down syndrome has absolutely positively changed the world. And I know that. I've intellectualized that, and I do recognize the gravity of what we have done. And with that being said, I did not wake up one morning, a terrible father, go run an Ironman and go to bed and all of a sudden become a great dad. I didn't, go to bed a terrible husband, go do an Ironman with Chris and wake up and become a great husband. None of that happened. I'm never going to forget where I came from. And I'm always going to remember that there's a lot of work that Dan Grieb has still got to do on himself personally. I was a great husband and a great father before that Ironman ever came. We got a couple more weeks of interviews left to do. And I know that, but once they're over, I'm going back to selling real estate. And the most profitable thing Dan Grieb can do for this company is sell real estate. I have a sales manager. She's on a salary. She gets her thing. She manages the team. She does the other stuff. When I go out and sell things, I'm the most profitable person that works here. And so I just have to do 6-7 transactions a month. And that's a pathway to $1 million in profit for me. See, if I can show you a quick formula, then I'll shut up for the teams. If you have a team and the team actually, in my view, pays the bills. Like if you're an agent production and the team pays all the bills, so that means they cover the admin team, like the team pays for Jessica, the team pays for the office, the team pays for all my cell phone, everything to do with operating business. That's what they do. Now, I'm blessed in that they still make money too. We profit from them. But if I go and do 7 closings a month at an average commission of, let's just say $9,000, that's $63,000 in straight profit every month. And you're like, well, what about taxes? No, they pay the taxes. I build my team so they cover the expenses, and then anything I do is straight profit. So if Dan does, let's see, 9 transactions a month, that's 83,000. 83,000 times 12 is $1 million in profit. That's it.
Do you run your own production on a separate P&L, or is it all together?
No, we run it all in the same. And one of the things that I do is I do my P&L by hand. So I do it by hand with my sales manager, and I give her a certain amount of money every month. She gets $45,000. And then the way I manage my money is I do very detailed P&Ls, but I also have very simple accounting. So she gets $45,000. She has that to pay like payroll and all of our expenses per month. And then what I do is all commission checks that come in, they're saved in a folder, and they all are deposited at one time at the end of the month. She pays all the bills at the end of the month. And then what's left, we already know the profit, right? We bring her account back to 45,000. So she's got 45. And then I have one account that my taxes go directly in. That's at a separate bank. My operating account's at a separate bank. My tax account's at a separate bank. My profit account is at a separate bank, and my personal account is at a separate bank. So in my tax account, in my tax bank, there's only one account. My profit account is here. I take my profits every month. I know what my profit is every single month. And I know based on the number of the months and everything we've made, we divide that much money I've made in profit, that much, we divide that by 12, by the amount of months, then we multiply it by 12, and I know what I'm on track for the year. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And we do it.
Were you always like this, Dan? Have you changed with your physical and mental transformation over the last 5 years? Has that turned you into the person I'm seeing describe this, or have you always been like this?
No, not always. I've been more financially minded before before the physical change. And that was because, I was a police officer, and my first year in real estate, my goal was to make $100,000, and I hired a coach right out of the gate. And that coach got me to with $100,000 in my first 4.5 months. So I hired my coach for twice as much. I had not just one coach, but twice a week I had my coach. And I ended up my first year in real estate selling 42 houses and making $242,000. And the next year I sold 70 houses and made almost $400,000. And then the market crashed. I lost everything, got my house foreclosed on, cars repossessed, all of that. And that was like, and this is where I'd like to kind of wrap some stuff up for you here. I have these 3 guiding principles, and I'll kind of do that. Number 1, life is 10% about what happens and 90% how you respond. Number 2, you are at the place, at the time, going through what you're supposed to be going through, experiencing what you're supposed to be experiencing as preordained by the God of the universe. Like none of this is happening by accident. And when you're going through the valley season, like the growth season of your life, you ask yourself, God, what are you preparing me for? Or God, what is it you need me to learn? And the last one is today's the first day of the rest of your life. Like it doesn't matter what you did yesterday. It doesn't matter how things went down, good or bad. Today's the first day where you start putting it all back together. Well, with that being said, when I lost everything, that was God preparing me to be my family's first millionaire. See, I didn't understand money and the rules of money. I didn't understand Dave Ramsey or Robert Kiyosaki or Edelman or any of these financial philosophies about retirement or none of that. I took a crash course on that when I was looking at bankruptcy. Now, I didn't declare bankruptcy, not that I think bankruptcy is entirely bad, but I didn't declare bankruptcy because I felt like I needed to go through that so I could learn some things. And that's what prepared me to be financially savvy today. See, the reason why I have all my money at separate bank accounts is because the IRS came and whacked all my money out of my bank account at one time. And I was like, if I had this in multiple bank accounts, by the time the first one got hit, I could have got to the last one. So I no longer commingle my money in any way, so that I always pay the IRS. I always know what my profits are, and I always know what my operating capital for my team looks like, and I know what my personal operating capital looks like. So I know where I am. I could just look at my accounts and know I'm good.
Fantastic, Dan. And I know you have to go, and you're right. It is one thing making money. It's another thing protecting it. I cannot thank you enough. I am personally going to be listening and watching this a couple times so that I can take notes on everything that you said today. And I know I speak for all the people watching who will watch in the future. Thank you. Thank you for being so vulnerable and for being so transparent and for sharing everything you did today. I think it's a really important messages. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Bye, guys.